Welcome to the Industry Angel Podcast. We hear from the best business minds across the globe. Entrepreneurs, social influencers, marketing mavens, and sales rock stars. We've got them all. Here comes your weekly dose of inspiration with your host, Ian Farrar.
Welcome to episode 123 of the Industry Angel. Bit of a different kind of episode for you today, as I'd like to share an interview I gave this to fellow podcaster Rob O'Donoghue, also known as Rob of the Green, when I appeared on his 1% Better podcast recently. Rob's a cracking guy, and it's great to be a part of this fantastic global podcast network, because us IndieCasters must stick together. We don't have the resources and funding that the large network shows do, so thank you for returning, and of course for your messages of support. If you're here for the first time, let me know who you are and what you're up to, because I love to hear your story. I love to know how you use the show, what platform you listen on, and I've noticed a great deal of listeners are on Spotify lately. Thanks to James MacDonald for his ongoing support. James also listens to the Film Pro Productivity podcast, and I know the host of that show also listens. So thanks to you both. Thanks to Yanda from South Africa, who sent me a lovely message. Keep dancing, Yanda. Thanks to Stacey, who got in touch via LinkedIn and recently found the show and has been bashing through some episodes. Okay then, let's hear from today's guest. Well, me.
So, on to this week's episode. It is with a gentleman called Ian Farrar, and I talked with Ian a couple of months back. He is a podcaster, he is an entrepreneur, he focuses on sales, marketing, digital business, he's a coach, and a very interesting character. He and I connected last year around the time of International Podcast Day. Both of us presented on that, and we stayed in touch, and we got chatting, and we said it'd be great to do a podcast, an interview. He's from the UK, he's from the Sunderland area, and we talk about his entrepreneurial journey, how he took the leap out from the corporate world, hitting burnout, dealing with stress, overcoming that. His life changed as a result. He's very interested and active in volunteering. We dive into coaching and what that is really all about. We also talk about learnings from the entrepreneurial journey he's been on and how important cash flow is. That seems to be a topic that comes up a lot when I talk to folks going out on their own, something to be very aware of. For more details of this episode, go to the show notes. That would be good. And as always, follow the show, subscribe, and let me know if you're enjoying these. And hopefully next week will be another jewel episode, all going well. So take it away, Ian. And folks, thanks for checking it out and enjoy. Good luck. Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the 1% Better podcast, and I'm delighted to introduce Ian Farrar to the podcast, to the show. Ian, welcome. Thanks for taking the time out to have a chat.
Thanks for inviting me along to your amazing show, Rob.
Oh, no bother at all. So offline we were having a good conversation about the world of podcasting, so we're definitely going to dive into some of that today to try and maybe extract some learnings that we've both got from it. Certainly from your world, I think you have over 115 or so episodes done from your own show, Industry Angel, which I'm looking forward to hearing about. You're also an entrepreneur, and you have a number of different roles. It's something I definitely want to dig into. Were you always planning to be an entrepreneur?
You've just gone straight in with that one.
Dived in.
Do you know, it's really funny when you say a number of different roles, because quite often people say, so Ian, what do you do? And I'm just like, I get stuck. Yeah. I don't really have the elevator pitch, but in terms of entrepreneurship, I guess it was never something I deliberately wanted to do. I just become a bit disillusioned with the corporate world, and then thought, well, you know what it is, I'm just going to start it myself.
Yeah, definitely kind of sensed that from reading through your bio and doing a bit of research on it. Not the disillusion part, but it looked like through your career, you're engineer and you had a number of different roles. Was there a point at where you said, as you said, you got disillusioned, that jumping out point? What brought it to a head? Can you maybe talk to me a bit about that?
Oh, Rob, honestly, if you got all day,
Pretty much.
This is gonna...
Yeah. I can edit it. We get people to listen on 2x speed if they want.
I talk pretty fast anyway, and actually my accent as well might be difficult. I had I'll just digress a little bit before I answer. I had a iTunes review yesterday, I think it was, and somebody said, "I don't like Ian's podcast. I don't like his accent."
God, did they say where they were from?
Well, the username was Londoner83.
Giving it away there, huh?
Yeah, you go.
Yeah. Well, I like it. I like it from Ireland. It's kind of it's a nice accent. We can agree upon that for sure.
Well, I think we've got trusted accents from a customer service point of view. They often use the Irish or the Geordie accent, don't they?
They do that in Scotland, I think, as well. There's statistics to say that when somebody rings up to complain that they hear those accents, they're a bit more calmed straight away.
Oh, well, that's good. I hope everyone's feeling calm.
Hopefully,
now.
Not too calm. They haven't fallen asleep or anything. Yeah.
They won't be calm in a moment when I tell you why I became disillusioned, because I burnt out, Rob. You've just got to Google my name and burnout, and you'll see a lot there. I really speak openly about this. I worked in sales for a good 10 years and really, really pushed the envelope too much. I collapsed. I was hospitalized. I was on beta blockers. I've had chest x-rays, ultrasound scans, cameras down the throats, perfectly fine, just stressed, just pushing too hard. And I speak a lot about culture now as well because of this, because I think as business leaders, we should be aware of our staff and how much they do push and not let them do that. I mean, we're constantly connected. We've got our phones sitting on our desks on silent, no doubt, and we're still getting notifications coming through. As business leaders, we should be avoiding our staff doing that, because burnout is a terrible thing. And I was only in my 30s.
Yeah, no, it sounds familiar. I'm nodding here. You can't see me anymore, but something similar comes to mind from my perspective. You mentioned leaders that are pushing very hard and putting that pressure on. What approaches would you use, or I suppose inspire to team members to be able to deal with that type of leader, and how they could push back on that, or how they could manage that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. From my side as a leader, it's all about support. And, in sales and a lot of other careers, you've got targets, you've got key performance indicators, you might be incentivized with bonuses and things like that. And to be honest, you can come quite addicted to it. I mean, I know I was kind of thinking, right, if I hit this target, I'm going to go on holiday, I'm going to get a new car, I'm going to get a conservatory. And, it's crazy. And as leaders, we really need to support our staff and our sales teams and have that regular communication going forward. And it's nice to have that little bit of incentivization. It's nice to have a bit of gamification between employees and friends, but we really need that support. We really need to know the why. We'll do a little bit Simon Sinek here, the golden circle.
Mm-hmm.
So the how, the what, but the why is so key. And I think sometimes we lose our why when it comes to business. We just end up going through the motions and getting on that hamster wheel. So we really need to step back a little bit and remember why we took this job, why we're in this job, and what it means to us from a career.
Yeah, I'm again nodding, because when I read that book, probably about 4 years ago around Christmas time, it was around the time when I was beginning my own, I suppose, turning points in what I was doing, where I wanted to go, and figuring out what my why was. So what is your why? When you can figure that out yourself, how can you define it?
It's a funny one. I'm going to bend that question a little bit, because when people say, you seem really successful, and we always hear, like, well, what does success mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
Is it success that I've got a nice car on the drive? I haven't, by the way. I got rid of that. I fell out of love with money and cars. But what does success mean to you? Well, for me, it's not doing the 9 to 5. I can't do the 9 to 5 anymore. I've kind of found that that's not for me. It's being able to take the kids to school. It's being able to do training when I want, physical training. And it's being able to do things like this with you, Rob, having fun, doing some podcasts, creating some content. That's what success looks like to me. And that's my why, that I don't want to be that 9 to 5 corporate person that I once was.
No, I hear you. So just again, I think we got connected a couple of times over the last few years. You talked at International Podcast Day last year as well. I think yours went smoother than mine in that your internet didn't break halfway through it, whereas mine did. What did you talk about on that presentation? Maybe give us an overview of what your talk was there.
I can't even remember. No, it's I do remember yours though, Rob, because you handle it really well. You're doing yourself a disservice because you under pressure you handle that really well. It was good. International Podcast Day was amazing. It's a great initiative. Obviously, I don't know, many listeners might not know about it, but basically we represent our countries, Rob. So it was back to back, various countries around the world for over 24 hours. I can't remember what it was now.
It was 30 hours or so, yeah.
Was it? Wow. Yeah, cool. And there was lots of different talks there. And I think mine was around podcasting and my journey and my career. Really, I just kind of shared some of the stuff that I've been through and what podcasting's done for me. Like obviously you and I met, if you like, across the waves about podcasting. We've had the opportunity to speak to people on International Podcast Day. I was talking about some of the things that I've done. I've wrote a chapter in a book on podcasting, and the author I never met. I just met him through Skype and through podcasting. So it was about the community really, and about creating some really killer content and differentiating yourself from the norm really.
Yeah, no, it was a good talk and well done on it. One of the things that strikes me as we talked about the different roles that you have, which one do you enjoy most doing currently?
You had to ask that one, didn't you? Because my customers are listening. My clients will be like, going, whoa, you told me I was the most important thing under the sun.
Well, maybe even professionally and personally you could split it out.
Well, I'll tell you what it is. I've lost it lately. I've just got absolutely addicted to volunteering. I don't know if you've seen some of the stuff I've been up to.
Yeah.
But so I'm writing a book on 101 ways to volunteer. And basically what I'm doing is just giving my time volunteering at loads of really diverse stuff and just seeing what the impact is. And it's going to be like a coffee table style book where you can pick it up and you can just flick to, I don't know, voluntary number 37 and just read about it's a little kind of blog style, if you like, a little diary. So what the volunteering was like, what the impact was, what did I learn, who did I meet, and even in the short space I've been doing it, it's just been absolutely amazing. I've just learned so much, met some fantastic people, really opened my eyes, and I can't wait to hit the 101. I think I've given myself a little bit of a tough target, but if it was 10 or 20, then everyone would do it. It would be boring, wouldn't it? So, but yes, the volunteering thing is really just, I just love it. I just love it.
Oh, was that something you were always passionate about doing? Maybe when you look back on the point where you were at breaking point and burnout, probably wasn't room in your world for that at that time?
That's a good question. I remember about 10 years ago, I went on a course, and it was for leaders. And what I realized was that I needed to become more of an experienced leader, and quite quickly. So I decided I'd try to look for some pro bono board positions. So I joined my local housing association as a director of that company. I joined my son's school, so a parent governor on his board of governors at the school, just to try to get that experience, getting used to having board packs and targets and sitting around the board table and discussing initiatives. And it was great. I mean, if any listeners are there and they're thinking about something similar, go for it. You do. There's so many positives. You're giving something back, but you're also learning yourself. And I think that's where it kind of started from. It just got something that I've always done for the last 10 years is I've always had pro bono positions.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I do something similar for the Project Management Institute. I know it's maybe not as socially responsible. It's more international, but it's more to the profession. But being part of that opens up so many other opportunities, so many learnings. You're kind of learning in a safer environment as well, where you mightn't get as much of a repercussions if you make mistakes, which I think is is certainly useful. we talked about volunteering and the passion for that. What are the other kind of values that you would have that you feel make up your, I suppose, your identity, make up you?
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about my parents if I can on this one, Rob. It's interesting. So my father worked in the shipyards for decades, and now, interestingly enough, he taught me so much about the world of business. And people say like, how's that? And I think what he taught me was just values. I remember he always said this one thing, and I've quoted this a number of times throughout my career. You've got to be able to look at yourself in the mirror. And I always come back to that. So in terms of values, could you actually do that? Could you make a decision? Could you sign a deal? Could you sell something to somebody and then look at yourself in the mirror? So it's all about having integrity, being humble, having honor. And I've really got my parents to thank me for that.
Yeah, they do say that your core set of values are ingrained in you from a very young age, maybe up to 12 or something like that. But we probably don't realise what they are until later in life, I suppose. So that's kind of cool to hear that. When you became the entrepreneur, and how many years are you kind of out on your own doing that now?
This will be 5 years now.
Okay, 5 years. Maybe talk to me about some of the challenges that you didn't expect when you said, right, I'm going out on my own, things that came up that you learned massively from in the early stages.
Yeah, I can do that. You know what it is? I feel a bit of a fraud when I say 5 years, because I was a commercial director of a business for I was there for 10 years, and I felt like that was my learning ground, and I felt like what I did was learned about business, made a lot of mistakes, understood the ups and the downs, but I did it with someone else's money, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it was a company of 20, 30 strong. I was solely responsible for sales, so I had 20, 30 mortgages on my head, if you like, but it still was owner managed, and it still wasn't solely mine from a shareholding point of view. So I just learned so much in that space. So when I did leave and when I did go out alone, I felt like I kind of had a really good grounding behind me. I think one of the things about going out on your own is it's cash flow. The safety net of being paid every month. I say this to my friends. In April of this year, I know who's paying you, and they're like, yeah, it's my gaffer. Yeah. Well, in April, I don't know who's paying me. And this is what, as an entrepreneur, this is what we sit with, this, constant looking at cash flow. And even like this month, for instance, I was just saying to my friends, I've took my eye off the ball really from a cash flow point of view, because what happens is you deliver, you look for work, you find it, you deliver like hell, and then you think, oh my God, I'm not actually looking for any more work, and you get these little bell curves where you're really high delivering, and then your cash flow drops off, and you start looking for leads again, you find more, the curve goes back up, and you've got to really be mindful of like, you're looking to the future for, I'm in this project now, but when it finishes, what's coming at the other end? And then when am I going to invoice that? So I guess that's the main thing from an entrepreneur, is to really look at the cash flow side of it.
Okay, good insights on that. I think I've heard the cash flow piece is the one that maybe people don't think of when they're jumping out. That whole thing of following your passion versus having kind of a sound financial head on your shoulders is probably something you need to balance. I read a book last year, I think, or 2 years ago now, called So Good They Can't Ignore You. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I don't know.
I can't remember the author right now, but it basically talked about following your passion, and gave loads of examples of people who were similar to you and others burnt out, wanting then to jump out and become a yoga instructor, or set up a coffee shop, or really go after those things that they're passionate about. But again, 6 months in or a year in, it may be their passion, but it's not paying the bills, and they didn't really put that level of thought into it. I suppose in your instance, you were going into a role or a world where you did know a lot about, though, I'd imagine, right?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I know the one key thing is that you only need to run out of money once, and the business is gone. So yeah, I was really mindful of that, and I see it myself as well. I know exactly what you're saying there about people going off and doing the passion, but I think you've just got to cut your cloth accordingly. So if you've been in business and you have been paid every month and you are getting, I don't know, let's for argument's sake, say you're getting £2,000 a month, and you're paying your rent or your mortgage out of that, and you're paying your car and your TV, your Sky, subscriptions, and your mobile phone. At the end of the day, when you go and work for yourself, there's always things you can cut out. You're not going to starve, but maybe your lifestyle has to change. Maybe it's not a week or two in Spain. Maybe it's a camping trip. Maybe it's not the flash car and you drive. Maybe you suck it up and you have a smaller car or a second-hand car, or you ride your bike around. Do what you can to follow your passion, and if that's what success is to you, and then that's what you get your life out of. You're not going to look back on at the end of your days. You're not going to on your deathbed. You're not going to look back and go, man, I wish I'd had one or two more business meetings.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm pretty sure that would be the case, that you're not. You talk about coaching, so I'm coaching. I've done the diploma in it. I do a good bit of that pro bono as well. How would you talk about your own coaching approach, your coaching style, or how has that developed?
It's interesting about development, because I think the main thing you have to do is just listen a lot. I'm sure you've had this in your coaching role, Rob, and you end up being like a therapist, don't you? You just listen, and clients say, this has been like a therapy session for me. Like that's actually, I feel like that is a compliment when someone says that, because that means that I've listened, and I've listened enough. I've been on the wrong side of some business coaches and mentors, and it's all about them. Here's what I've done. Here's the right way to do something. This is what you should be doing. I just shut up and listen and just let them get it all off the chest. And then once we've got information, then we can kind of unpick it and find a way to unravel together. And I love whiteboards. I don't know about you, Rob, but I love getting a felt tip in my hand, and we're just drawing things out together and doing together. So I'm not a fan of preaching. I'm a fan of listening and then doing things together. Is that how you do yours?
Yeah, pretty much. One of the things that always stood out for me when we were doing our coaching training was this kind of 90-10 rule. They said as a coach you should be listening 90% of the time and talking 10%. Yeah. And I try to keep that in mind as much as I can. Obviously, when you're listening to somebody, you don't want to be keeping that too much in mind because you're not really listening. But if I find myself talking a lot, I know I'm probably mentoring as opposed to nearly coaching. And it's really important to kind of step back and as you go through and you do more of it, you become more aware of that. And I kind of like to say that at the start of a coaching engagement, that this is the rules, because you again probably know that a lot of times people come for coaching and they don't really know what it is. They expect to be maybe given answers, and they want to get advice in lots of ways. And it's very important to clarify at the start, like, hey, you're going to do a lot of the work here, and I'm going to hold you accountable in lots of ways, but I want to hear what you're talking about. And I totally agree with what you said about them talking and like therapy, because it effectively the first session, I always find it is, and they leave in a great mindset because they've had somebody listen to them for a long time without judgment, which is probably the first time in that whole long time as well. So
yeah, we know it can be a lonely journey, and especially in the entrepreneurship world. I was coaching the other week, and I was with an MD who had 10 members of staff, and he'll talk to me differently than he'll talk to members of staff. He can't talk about something like the cash flow issue, because then the other 10 members of staff start panicking if they're going to get paid next week. So it can be a lonely journey. So basically what I'd like to say is, look, let's get it all on that table. I can't help you if you don't tell me some of the things that are on your mind, because I'm going to make decisions, or I'm going to help you make decisions on things that are true. So you've got to be true with us, and just act humble and with integrity, and obviously have that confidentiality thing as well is huge,
Yeah, totally. Do you have a coach that coaches you, and how do you actually, play that role yourself to help grow and develop?
It's really interesting, and I'm toying with this at the moment. I've always had a mentor, but not for the last few years, and I've always enjoyed it. And I think one word that you used earlier on there was accountability. Now, that was the reason why I had a mentor, to become accountable. But what I've realized in this last few years is that I'm really becoming accountable to myself, and I kind of punish myself a little bit. I'm really tough, and I really set some hard goals and targets. So I'm not sure that I need that coaching at the moment, but what I do have is a bank of really good friends and associates. So, for instance, let's just say a speaking point of view. So I'm speaking to you now. I'm a member of the Professional Speakers Association. If I want to do a talk, or if I need to bounce something off, I can stand up there. I can give a 10 or 15-minute talk, and then they can critique me and tell me, change this, do this, Ian. So I think having that, bank of friends has been really good. But I don't have like a kind of one sole coach or mentor.
Yeah, it's kind of like a mastermind group, or a group of folks that you can bounce things off, and it's like a quid pro quo environment, I suppose.
100%. Yeah, I'm actually going to do a podcast in the next week or two with a bunch of friends, because just like this, Rob, you're talking through stuff and you end up finding some really gold nuggets. And the amount of times, and I'm sure you've had this in your coaching position, the amount of times you've had a conversation with somebody and thought, wow, that was really good. I'd love to have shared that. So I just said to some friends the other week, let's set the microphones out. Let's go to a pub. Let's test some real ales, and let's just chew the fat about some topics and see what happens.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. All right, as long as it doesn't go on to like 5 hours and the real ales become whiskey and things like that.
Longest podcast ever.
Oh God, there was a world record in there somewhere, I'd say. One of the things I'm fascinated about, because something I face regularly, is kind of this idea of facing your fears and approaches of how you are aware of them and how you overcome them. What comes up when I ask you about fear, and maybe any examples that you've addressed in the recent term?
It's a funny one. Fear, I had this real strange relationship with fear, because nothing much scares me anymore. I just feel like I can literally do anything. And I was talking to a friend of mine about this. We sat down, we said, like, let's think of something we can't do. And we couldn't do it. We both were just like, we can do anything. We can literally do anything we want. And I know when you have that mindset, though, I mean, I know obviously I can't just say, right, I'm going to make $1 billion or something, but I feel there's nothing holds you back. You just have to go for it now. And when I look back at some of my early careers, and you talk about fear, what immediately sprang to me was things like going to China on my own, flying over to China, bouncing around there on a few internal flights, having business meetings in the Middle East with some, real high profile people. I guess there was a bit fear in there. And I think now I've done those things, there's not much that'll freak me out, if you know what I mean. And, I think we've got a few battle scars, and, being a coach, I think you need those. And I've gone through some personal struggles and family struggles, and I think you need them battle scars to be able to talk to people from a coaching point of view. It's like this 22-year-old life coach scenario I often talk about. It doesn't exist. You cannot be a 22-year-old life coach.
Yeah.
So, we've got a few grey hairs, Rob, and you need that in that role. So, by the time you get to this far down the line, I feel like I've had enough fear, and I'm not going to let it bother us.
Yeah, and it can help drive you on, I suppose. In some ways, you can turn it into excitement, and there's that whole kind of balance there. I get it from the 22-year-old life coach or become a life coach in 3 weeks sort of intensive program that you can do, which I see on Facebook and other social media sites, which again, I don't take offense to it, but I say, like, that's kind of crazy. But I suppose, some people buy into it. The battle scars are definitely needed. I'm always interested in this one. I see a lot of people that declare themselves as executive coaches or business coaches and whatnot, but haven't ever actually worked in the business world, or maybe they're coming from a sporting background or whatever. I'll stop talking now. I'll let you answer, because I've kind of set the thing alight there, perhaps.
You did. I see it all the time, man. It's like buy my program. You mentioned Facebook there. Buy my business program, 10x your business with this proven, program to help you take your business forward and scale it up and hustle, et cetera, et cetera. they're making money or telling people how to make money, but they've never actually made money. They've never actually made money with a business. Their business is to tell people what to do. And the thing is, once you've bought that program for $250 and you read through it, you think that was naff. It's too late. You've spent the money. So I see a lot of that. There's a lot of that. But I mean, you talk about fear, and I think I'm going to talk a little bit about imposter syndrome here. Because now, if I was to do that, if I was to tell you that I can, 10x your business overnight and this kind of stuff, I wouldn't feel comfortable in that because I don't know that. And I do get imposter syndrome. I think I'd be mad not to. I think I'd be a zombie or a liar if I said I didn't get nerves. If I need to stand up in front of hundreds of people, of course I'm nervous. It's a human emotion. It's like what you said. If you can flip it into excitement, I can't help how I feel, but I can control how I react to something. So yes, I'm going to get that bit of imposter syndrome, but what I'm not going to do is call myself an expert in something that term scares me so much. If I'm going to do a talk and someone introduces me as an expert on social media, I'm like, oh no, because I'd never ever call myself an expert in anything, even when I'm on my deathbed and I've done 50 years in a particular subject, because there's always stuff to learn. So when you see these people who never ran businesses, they're just imposters at the end of the day. Like, sorry.
No. Hey, look, we're being open, and again, I do a lot of meditation and mindfulness, and it certainly helped me with when I'm on social media not to react or to say this thing is, this person is, what are they talking about? I kind of catch myself before I get into an angry state, but you just see it, and it's always interesting to hear perspectives on it. I'm just looking on your website. Sorry, you were going to say?
I was just going to say, do you not think that there's many other people that think that way? You said something on Facebook there, like you see these people talking about being life coach and that. I mean, there must be loads of people who must look at that and go, oh, really?
Oh, no, I would say, they go absolutely like crazy to say you're not, but they're probably internalizing that. What I've found beneficial, I think I posted about it, I did a blog or a video about it, but our relationship with social media and how it makes us feel, we could totally control. But you would hear an awful lot of people saying, oh, this person or that person are really pissing me off because they're talking about being a life coach or whatever. And I get that, but I think the sooner we kind of are say, look, they're putting out whatever they're putting out, it shouldn't make me have a bad day and that sort of thing.
Exactly.
And I think that's the key thing. You have to kind of flip a little bit, and that's where the real coaching would come in handy, to kind of help people through being aware of that. But it's easier said than done. Like, it's just that stimulus and response. You see the thing, you respond to it too quickly, I guess, through meditation and just being a bit more present and not letting it bother you. You can choose not to go a bit crazy on it and start kind of road rage or Twitter rage in response. I'm looking through your... Sorry, go on.
No, just one quick little thing on that one. I mentioned before about you can't help the way you feel, but you can help how you react. Quick story on this one. I remember talking to a priest, and he was talking to me, and I think he was giving his confession at the time. We're going to get deep here. And I was just sort of saying, like, I've got these feelings and this and that. And he said, look, you can't help your feelings. You could just help how I react. And he said, like, I've got to talk to people in my parish, and I know some of them might be bad people, but and I'd want to kind of react, but I can't, and I can't help those feelings because they're just human emotions that come into your brain, but it's just how you deal with them. And it's just how I react. So you think these holy priests and they mustn't feel that way. Of course you do. You're just a human being. You can't help it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The primary emotions, they're there.
Yeah,
they're there for a reason. So absolutely. Looking at your website and just scroll down through some of the episodes, I'm interested in one that you've done a solo show on around career mapping and goal setting. I don't want to put you on the spot to kind of talk into huge detail on it, but what is your approach to goal setting?
You're not going to put us on the spot, but you're going to put us on the spot.
Just at a high level. I don't want a 40-minute interview on it, but
Rob, that's a bit like saying no offense, but, and then offending us after.
Yeah, I know. Wouldn't do that to you.
Goal setting, yeah. I'm going to answer this by talking about this podcast actually, because what I realized was that I hadn't done enough. I sit and had this epiphany, and I was just thinking, if you went in the room and someone had to describe who you were, how would they describe you, that person? So they might say, oh, Ian, yeah, he's a nice guy, he does this, that, and the other. But I thought, like, what do I actually want to do? So they might say, okay, that's that guy who volunteers and he's going to write a book on that. Or that's that podcaster who did this, that, and the other. I wanted to actually have something to talk about, to actually do something. So then I thought, well, when I talk about this episode, this is what I wanted to try to inspire people to do, was just to do more. Don't get to that point in life where you look back and think, God, I've just done absolutely nothing. I've just worked for the man for 40 years and I haven't accomplished anything. Well, it's in our power to accomplish something. You can do anything, just like I was saying before. There's nothing you can't do. So that was it for me. It was like you can map your own career. If you're not happy with it, it's in your power to control it. If you want to move, you move. And I sit with some friends. We have a beer on a Saturday night, and all I hear is about, the business that they're in, they don't like it, or the boss they work. Then just change. What's the worst that's going to happen? So that kind of podcast was more so about just encouraging people to get some stuff done, do more, create a bucket list, write it down, and just go for it. There's no time like the present. We do not know where we're going to be next year, if at all be here. So let's just get it done.
Mm-hmm. Yep, get the inertia moving and go forward. About podcasting, so how did you begin your podcasting journey? What was it, the spark, and where did it all come from?
You mentioned a few times about reading books, and I've just went, nope, sorry mate, don't have that one. And it's because I just don't have time, and that's not my chosen medium anymore. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and before I found podcasting, I listened to a lot of audiobooks. Mm-hmm. But interestingly enough, I love books, and I did have a massive relationship with books. I mean, for instance, I gave myself a target of reading the top 100 books. I think it was the BBC's chart. And again, another little crazy target I set myself. I thought, you can't be an authority on books or literature if you haven't actually read them. So that was one thing I did. So I smashed through Moby Dick, which is quite a big doorstop.
Still haven't read it.
Yeah, I pushed through all the classics, Wuthering Heights and Emily Bronte. Like, that was painful. Right. But then I thought, I can't actually get to reading all of these. I'm going to have to start listening to some. Mm-hmm. And then that's when I found audiobooks, and I just was traveling up and down the country or on planes, just consuming books as quick as I could to get through the list. And then I thought, I'm not really interested in Wuthering Heights. I want to listen about, I don't know, Sunderland Football Club for my sins, or I want to listen about conspiracy theories or hidden bases in America, So when internet radio came out, I listened to a lot of US radio stations, and then they were creating podcasts after that. So I just started creating podcasts, listened to a lot of them, got a bit disillusioned with the business ones because they were a bit samey, And then I thought, it is. If I'm a big mouth here. I'm complaining how they're so samey. Well, then just put your money where your mouth is and just create your own. So that's really where the journey started, and it was the same time that I sort of started off on my own entrepreneurial journey as well. So it was a bit like accountability, and I wanted to sort of document my journey as well.
Very, very interesting. Yeah, I think it resonates with me. Podcasting, I suppose, I don't know but 6, 7, 8 years ago, maybe, when I started listening to them. And when I was exercising, I used to be sick listening to music, and I love learning. So it was combining the two together, and it was just the best feeling ever to be running a 5K and then, listening to an episode of Stuff You Should Know or whatever, because I was actually taking something in that distracted me as well as helped me learn. And then having that kind of mobile university with you in your phone of learning is just so rewarding. Audible, actually, just as an aside, it would be similar. I've gone back to reading a lot of physical books over the last 18 months or so. I was a year or two using Audible, and then I don't know whether it was I just overdosed on it or found it just that although it was interesting, I still found myself having to maybe sit down when I was listening to it and maybe take notes and take kind of key nuggets out, or I might forget them. So I've kind of, I still listen to a lot of podcasts, but maybe do more physical reading of books. Might have been as well, the last Audible book I listened to was Benjamin Franklin's biography, which was 24 hours long, so I think that nearly killed me. It was pretty...
Have you come across Blinkist, where it sort of condenses the books and tells you the best bits and pieces?
Okay, I haven't used it, but I've heard of it, yeah.
But yeah, I totally get what you're saying there about wanting to make notes and stuff. But one thing I want to ask you there, you asked me about podcasting, but offline we mentioned that you were planning it for 6 months. So what did that planning look like, Rob?
Yeah, so basically I got it into my mind about a year before I actually launched, to say this is something I really want to do. I love consuming it. I want to try and maybe flip it and produce it. And through my own background in my career of project management and work here in Cork with kind of different organisations, I knew a few good business leaders that I thought, right, they'd be interesting guys to just record an episode and talk to them about their life story, how they got to where they got to. And it was in my mind for a while, and I was procrastinating. And I remember one day I said, like, you're just going to have to do this. So I went out and bought an Apple, a MacBook Air. So I spent like $2,000 or something on that and some initial kit. And I said, now I know for me to actually really commit to something, I spend money on it and then say, right, I'm going to start moving. As soon as I did that, I started to plan things out. So being a planner with a project management background, I figured out just the things I needed to do to a certain point. So I was probably much more planful from that perspective, rather than just recording something and throw it out there. It's just in my nature. I don't know, it's good in some ways and bad in others. And over the next few months, I think I said, right, realistically, it'll take me 3 months. I wanted to record maybe 10 episodes before I launched, so that I had a bit of a backlog, and I just had to get the equipment right and, get the website up. And there was so many things that I was kind of creating a list of tasks that needed to be done, and then started to space them out, because I was only really able to do this in the evenings or at weekends, outside of the day job. So rather than rushing it, I kind of planned it all out and did my planning and my execution and testing, and then having all the episodes, like editing episodes. I remember the first couple of episodes I interviewed guys for 2 hours long. It must have took me 10 hours to edit them, and then I was even I'm using Audacity still for editing, and I was just exporting at different speeds, and the sound quality I was just learning so much, but none of it was ever unsurmountable, which was key, because the only comparison I would have here is when I was in college and when I was early career, I might have been working in software development and stuff like that, and the way my brain works just can't figure that stuff out, and I was banging my head against a brick wall, never really going anywhere. Whereas with this, ironically enough, everything was moving in 1% increments towards the goal all the time. So that was why I was kind of getting more and more motivated to do it. I joke as well, the first time I ever did an intro to an episode, when I was sitting at home one night, recording on a new microphone I got, and I listened to it back, and I was just ashamed of myself, embarrassed listening to my voice, and but then got over it, and you don't hear that stuff anymore. It was a process. I figured the imposter syndrome was raging like crazy loud with me before I launched, and it took me that length of time to kind of make sure I had something good enough here to get out the door. So that was kind of it at a high level. There was a plan put in place, and I tried to follow the steps sequentially to it, and knowing that it was all down on my shoulders, I knew I'd get through it, rather than maybe having to rely on others sometimes, which would have made it a bit more difficult,
It's interesting what you say about listening to your own voice, because I'm sure you've got listeners there who want to do more social media content. They might want to do some video, but they just don't feel that they've got, the steel to do it. And you just have to get it done, don't you? After a while, you get used to your own voice, you get used to how you look. It's just like anything, it just gets easier over time.
Oh, totally. And the video, like the voice piece was, I guess the way I was doing it was in increments. So the voice thing and getting a podcast out, at that time I was not doing any video stuff, and I just that was a bridge too far, so I kind of got comfortable with this stage and then started to put out 1 minute videos. And now, yeah, like that, I'm looking at them, not looking at my face anymore. I'm actually looking and just listening to make sure it flows and whatnot. So you get over yourself in lots of ways, you know, as long as my core kind of view is as long as I feel there's something of benefit to a listener in it, then I'll do it. I'll put it out. It's never about me. It's never about just look at the content I'm creating. Anyone can throw out lots of content all the time, but even if there's one or two little bits of nuggets of information out of it that they can take on board, that's my kind of mantra, or I won't do it. There's been a couple of episodes where I did, and thankfully only one or two that just I don't think were good enough to share, and it was my fault or maybe the guest's fault or whatever, but most of the time I think it ticks a box and there's something of value in it, so yeah.
Yeah, I think that's your opinion as well. You know, I sometimes beat myself up as well. I come off with a guest and I think that wasn't very good, but then you'll still put it out and then you get feedback from it. So,
yeah.
You know, surprising, isn't it?
Maybe I'll put those ones up on Patreon and people can pay loads of money to listen to those kind of lost episodes.
I think I'm going to say this one.
No. This one is definitely, I think, going pretty good so far. I guess the podcasting journey you've learned a lot from. What are the kind of maybe a standout guest? Is there any one that jumps out that you took a lot from that you say, wow, that was a really crossing the void, or, you know, crossing a bridge over, that you said, I've actually really got the knack of this now?
I think that there's a couple of things here. There's one guest that really resonates with me and we get on very well, and his way of thinking is so aligned to me from a marketing point of view, and that's Ted Rubin. He's over in the States. He's a lovely guy. We'll get on very well, although he doesn't get my British sarcasm. And I think in terms of, you know, crossing that chasm or really thinking that you kind of made some headway, it was when I started doing the live episodes. So what we do now is when I say live, yes, we go live over Facebook, Twitter and YouTube at the same time, but we also record in front of an audience. And that really upped the ante for me, you know, speaking to a guest, looking at the audience and then knowing that you were live streaming and it was going to go out as a podcast the next week. That was, you know, that in terms of fear, that was really pushing the envelope. But I've got over a few of them, and you know, I feel like now it's fine. I feel a little bit phased, but you know, not as much as I would in the early days.
Yeah, very true. I did one live last year. It was kind of an impromptu live with I was giving a talk, and then I had my kid, and I was going to interview the one of the lecturers afterwards, and we just said, will we just do it live in front of the audience that were in the classroom, I suppose, at the time. And it was great. It was really enjoyable. You can really just, you're on. You're on. You have to be on. You know it. There's no retakes of it here. Even though it wasn't streaming live, it was still recorded in front of people live, and you just don't want to kind of, you know, have to re-ask questions. But that's the plan for this year. Maybe a little bit more of that. And yeah, hopefully see where that one goes over the next while. You mentioned back in the day when you had the stresses and, you know, the burnouts. How do you now deal with stress, and how do you kind of balance things?
It's something that I'm really mindful of. I think I'm one of those people where I need to be able to say no a bit more. I just say yes to everything, and I do put a lot on my plate, and I'm always wanting to start new things, and I'm a real starter. I get dead excited about the next project. So what comes with that is stress, because then I seem to keep lumping it on. But the main thing for me is sport, is training. If I don't run or ride or swim, I just literally go stir crazy. It's like I've just got so much building up in my mind that I just need to get out there and just run, which then files it off in its relevant place. I think about things, you know, it's like a little bit of therapy for me, to be honest. So that's how I really deal with the stresses and strains of work life.
Do you set goals for yourself in the kind of exercise world as well, or are they kind of unstructured type things?
Pretty unstructured. I'm a bit of a lick my shoulder sport. I've never really excelled in anything in sport, but I can run, ride, swim, lift, kick, punch. everything. I can do pretty much every sport that I've tried, but I've never, like I say, excelled in it. I just enjoy activity. I enjoy sport. I enjoy being around people, the team bit of it. I love. So I'm getting a bit older now as well. So I still can make a little bit of incremental kind of goals, but I'm not going to set the world alight. I'm just quite happy doing the do, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I'm only asking because it's probably similar to myself. I do like setting targets of I'm running a marathon last year or doing an adventure race this year. It does help me, force me sometimes to actually get out and get that extra run in or whatever when I don't have those. Even though I kind of need to run as a type 1 diabetic, it's kind of key to exercise a lot, so it kind of gives me no option, and sometimes having no choice is good as well. It makes it very straightforward.
Yeah, you're dead right. I mean, I did a half marathon last year, gone there, and as you say, as soon as you put your name down, you've got to do it. So I see what you're saying, and I put my name down for a boxing fight in 6 weeks' time. Now I know I've got to train every other day or every day at least to be able to do that. So I guess that's the goal. But what I'm getting is, if I do a half marathon, I know I'm not going to start running at 140 like I used to. It's going to be a bit slower than that.
Yeah, I think I saw something on Twitter of one of your hands shaking. Were you practicing last night or something in boxing?
Yeah, yesterday I just had involuntary shakes in my hands. So, but it's just good fun, as you say. It's just doing something different, and getting out of the normal routine. When I've trained weights or when I've run, your body still reacts the same and it doesn't change. As soon as you change the sport up, it just seems to shift the body a gear, and you just have to. Your body has to respond. So I like just trying different things,
Very cool. Yeah, I would agree. At 2018, I took up Bikram yoga last year, the hot yoga.
Awesome.
And that was new for me. I've done yoga in the past, but this was quite intense, and it is amazing. From the hardest part of it is just not even the heat. For me, it's the mental challenge that you're just doing acrobatics in your brain of saying, like, this is all the kind of negative stuff in the world is coming in on you for the first whatever half hour or more, and then it starts to kind of diminish. But definitely agree with you. I'm agreeing with you a lot today, so I don't want to make it too agreeable all the time, but can't help it. One of the things I've reflected on recently is, for me to have a good day, I tend to try and do 3 things in the morning before I actually go to work, because when it gets to work, you don't know if it's guaranteed to be a good day or not. And there may be a combination of just reading for half an hour, or writing, or maybe doing a little bit of stretching or meditation or whatever. And I actually think even if I just did one of those, it would put me in a good mindset. The night before, if I said, right, first thing I'm going to do tomorrow morning is something I actually enjoy, set me off on a good trajectory for the day. Is there anything coming up for you there like that? How do you try to give yourself the best chance of having a good day?
That's I'm really glad you've raised that, because I did a little video on this, which I posted on LinkedIn a few months ago, from a culture point of view, and what I was encouraging business leaders, team leaders, managers to do was to maybe do a rota of your staff and give your staff half an hour extra, just one day that week, just to do something that would start their day off really well, whether that be taking your daughter to school, which I love to do. That's something that I really enjoy, and it's something that I strive to be able to do. Or whether that be, reading the paper, reading a chapter of a book, going to see your parents if you haven't seen them for a while, having a cup of tea with them, whatever it may be, something that will start their day off well. I think that's so important. So I'm really glad you've raised that. But yeah, for me, if I can train in the morning, if I can do some sort of training, I'm absolutely buzzing to kick on afterwards. But just taking the time out to take Jess to school is something that I'm really mindful that she's not going to want to be around me. Like, my son's 15 now, he takes himself to school. But I'm really mindful of like time, because I know she's going to be really independent shortly and won't want her dad there. So I'm just like trying to do as much as I can with her now when she wants her dad around. So things like that is good for me.
Okay, very cool. So this week I did a 1 Minute Monday, and it was a video that I do on LinkedIn to kind of call out. This week's topic was asking viewers, listeners, for some questions that I can use in season 3 of the podcast and just get some in. So I've got a few, right? So I'm going to ask you maybe one or two here just from folks that contribute. Is that okay?
Go for it. Yeah, put me on the spot again. Let's have it.
Sure. Well, look, there's no scripting here. The one that's coming up here, I'm reading. What question do you not like being asked, and why?
I think you just asked us it.
That question.
What question is?
Or maybe even flip it. Is there any question you would like to be asked but never get asked?
I guess it's about the best piece of advice you've ever had. I often get asked that one, and I can't help but I mentioned it already today about mentioning my dad and some, because I think it's so important that you can take values and experience from somebody outside of the business world. And I'll digress a little bit. My podcast is called the Diverse Business Podcast, and I know you like that term as well. Over 115 episodes now. And what I've had a bodybuilder on recently, a rapper, an adventurer, because I think in every walk of life, there's something to learn. So even though you think it's diverse, there's always something to learn from somebody else. So if I had to give somebody a bit of advice, for me, it would be to keep an open mind and not just decide that person's not for you. Like, give them the time.
Mm-hmm. Cool. No, that's a good one. I like that. I'll ask one other one. What's the most important lesson you've ever learned?
Oh, so for me, it's the things that people say and the things that people do are both very different.
And you've learned
do you want us to elaborate on that?
Maybe a little bit.
Well, I guess in business a few times I've worked for a few leaders that haven't really been truthful with what their personal goals were. So, my career progression has been stalled on behalf of somebody else's. So they promised me that this would happen, that would happen, and actually it didn't come to fruition. And when I look back, I've had a few instances where I think people have took advantage of my kind of nice nature, maybe. So I'm always mindful of, just being aware of that.
Okay. Very, very good. Look, we'll wrap it up with maybe one or two just other quick ones. I know we talked about books. I always, again, like to ask folks what book, be it audible or physical, that you might recommend. Is there anyone that comes up that you've took the most learnings from or that change your view on something?
It's a question I often get asked, and I could list books. I could talk about, How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is a classic, and I could talk about some of the more modern ones like Brené Brown's leadership book, but I quite often like to take it back to books that I enjoy reading, that I'm not trying to learn from, just that I enjoy. And one that I always enjoyed was a book by Jack Kerouac called On the Road. And I love travel, and Jack travels across America in the Beat Generation, and I love that. And I also love the book called Shantaram, because I've got quite an affiliation and a passion of visiting India. So there was a lot about traveling around India. So I love travel books because I just get lost in them. Very
cool. Yeah, some good ones. Some good ones there. I'll end with a cheesy enough one, but dinner guests, dead or alive, you could pick two. I normally like to say maybe not somebody that you know in your close family, but I'll leave it up to you and any reasons why you picked these two.
It's got. I don't even have to mess about here. Jim Morrison, Kurt Cobain.
Wow, tells a lot of the musical influences there.
100%, yeah. I love Nirvana. Nirvana Unplugged was an amazing album for me. I learned all them songs on guitar. And with Jim Morrison, I love poetry as well. And Jim wrote a lot of poetry, and quite dark, quite odd poetry, but I'm very aligned with the way we write as well. So those two for sure.
Very good. We never talked about Sunderland FC at all either. We've kind of had that as a question. What's the future for Sunderland?
Well, it's interesting because you guys over there have a bit of an affiliation with us. We've had lots of ties with Ireland and players. And, John O'Shea and we had the Drummondville Consortium with Niall Quinn. A lot of fans would come over from your side for the games and stuff.
Sure, and Roy obviously managing there for a while, wasn't he? And there's a lot of Irish connections.
There was indeed, and Roy was a character. Yeah, and there's a lot of stories about Roy. He didn't mess about, did he? But in terms of the club at the moment, I think we're back in good hands. We've took out our billionaire oil owner last year, and we've got another couple of owners that have came in who are real football men and really get the passion and get the city. You know, the drinking in the bars, they're coming on podcasts, they're talking. Where you see some of these billionaire owners and it's treated like a bit of a business and you never really hear from them. So it's really good and really refreshing that our new owners now are willing to get stuck in and listen and have a voice. So yeah, good times. It's going well.
Good stuff. I'll be keeping my eye on their upward trajectory in the table over the next few months. I'm an Arsenal fan, so we probably won't talk about that.
Well, I'll tell you one thing before we finish off. Last time I was over Cork, I didn't realise how massive hurling is. Is it hurling?
Yeah, huge. Yeah.
Wow.
Have you watched it?
We were over there a few years ago, and there was some final on, and there was a stadium which was just packed to the rafters over in Cork. I mean, like tens of thousands. It was just crazy.
Yeah. They just rebuilt that stadium now, and I think it's 50,000 or so, because Ed Sheeran played over here last year for 3 gigs in the stadium. It was probably just opening at the time, but hurling and Gaelic football massive, but primarily hurling in Cork is more popular than the Gaelic football. And the soccer team in Cork are pretty successful over the last few years as well. They've won the league and cup, and they've been in Europe, and it's a great city. It's nice and, you know, very easy to get around, but sport is very much running through its veins for sure.
And those are men, Rob. Those hurling guys are men.
That's a great. Like, I've never played it, so it tells you a lot about me. But it's like a game of men running around with axes, effectively.
Yep.
You know.
If you're in the States or you listen further afield, just Google hurling and you'll see it.
Yeah, very good. Ian, look, thanks a million for taking the time out. I'm delighted we could do this. I know we talked a few times over the last 6 months or so. It's come to this, and it's great to get your insights. Definitely a lot of similarities in our views of the world and what we're doing, and hopefully folks enjoy listening. And if you want to call out just how folks can listen to your podcast and get your website and, you know, engage with you, if there's any business opportunities, please go ahead and do that.
Yeah, thanks very much, Rob. So essentially it's just industryangel.com, and all my social links are on there. I'm really heavily user of Twitter, which is just Ian_Farrar. You'll find me if you just do a little bit of Googling. But Rob, I really appreciate your time, and I'm going to push that out as an episode on my podcast as well. So why don't you do the same, Rob? Where can we find you?
Absolutely. So my name is Rob O'Donoghue, but the handle I use for all this good stuff is Rob of the Green on Twitter, at Rob of the Green, on all of the things. Thankfully, at Rob of the Green wasn't taken before. There's a story behind Rob of the Green, but you can read that on the website as to where that came from. And Rob at robofthegreen.ie or .com. If you want to email me, I'd be happy to respond if you have any suggestions or feedback or questions. I'm always open to that. Helps me improve for sure as well.
Awesome, and I love the way you've just pointed people to go to your website and listen to the story behind that. Now you're going to get thousands of hits to the website, because I'm intrigued.
It's going to break it. The internet is coming down. Brilliant. Ian, look, thanks so much.
Yeah, cheers, Rob. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for your time.
Good man. Have a great day.
I had great fun recording that with Rob. He's one of the good guys, and I look forward to meeting Rob at an event soon. I'll link to Rob's 1% Better podcast in the show notes. It's definitely worth a listen. So I'd love your help this week. Please do with this one thing for me. Could you tell one person about this podcast show for me? Maybe in the office, the pub, at a networking event, or even a social media post. It really helps to grow this show. So until next time, I'm Ian Farrar. This is the Industry Angel. Thanks for listening.